Welcome on in, everybody. It is Thursday. It's noon.
It's caucus time.
It's caucus time.
Yep.
Hey, we might be remote today, but the spirit is still jolly and here. Oh, wait, that's Christmas. We're still waiting for Thanksgiving. Oh, man.
Yep.
But we're here. We're raring. We're ready to go. I'm jumping in to make sure everything is where it ought to be. When it comes to the stream. Obviously, we are cranking here on Rumble. If you're over on X, any of these places, we welcome you to hop on in to the chat. Feel free, jump in, let us know what's on your mind, because we got a lot. We got a big topic we're going to talk about today, but I think the news necessitates a discussion. Welcome on in. Okay, let's first, housekeeping. Unauthorizedcaucus.com. Go there, sign up, get all of the notifications about when the podcast drops. You'll get all of the links and resources, of which today there are definitely some resources you're going to want, those links. So head on over. Mason is nodding vigorously. We're absolutely right. So do that. And then also you can find from there all the social media and find us. If you want to support the channel, if you want to support the podcast and what we're doing, not only does your listening and downloading of the podcast matter, go and give us a review. Just fill out the stars, type in a few sentences, let us know what you think. Those are extremely helpful. And then you can directly support us either at unauthorizedcaucus.com. You can directly support us through Substack, or over on Rumble. You can do that as well. And it goes back in. This is not a financial endeavor for us. That just goes straight back into production quality and expansion, because we are entering a new age, and really truly I believe we've seen, if nothing else did you glean out of this past election cycle, new media, podcast media, long form discussions is becoming the current king of what people want to consume. They are unhappy with, I think, the legacy media and legacy media's move into social media, which has become really just a doom scrolling machine.
Mm-hmm.
But breaking free of that and looking for real discussions, I think, is actually a very big burden in society right now. I think we're seeing it. Trump just proved it, I think, with his strategy, his winning strategy on podcasts. So
now Trump wants podcasters at White House press briefings.
Oh my gosh, give those people credentials. That would be absolutely incredible.
Those people, we are podcasters. He's talking about.
I know. But I mean, all those people, I can call myself the third person. If the left can change grammar to mean nothing, I can call myself third person stuff. And
okay. Yeah.
At least that's grammatically correct.
Mm-hmm. I guess.
Yeah. What does they think about that? Huh? Anyway. Sorry. I'm gonna get spicy today. All right. News headlines out the gate. Or should I say out the gates? Out. There you go. Matt Gaetz has just announced that he is dropping out of the run for, or the nomination process of Attorney General. Here he is posting on X just a few minutes ago, about a half hour as of the recording of this podcast. I had excellent meetings with senators yesterday. I appreciate their thoughtful feedback and the incredible support of so many. While the momentum was strong, it is clear that my confirmation was unfairly becoming a distraction to the critical work of the Trump-Vance transition. There is no time to waste on a needlessly protracted Washington scuffle. Thus, I'll be withdrawing my name from consideration to serve as Attorney General. Trump's DOJ must be in place and ready on day one. Mason, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I get his reasoning. It's unfortunate because I thought he was the perfect bull in the china shop for the situation to just really start, throwing axes at people and chopping stuff apart. But the deep state doesn't like that. So all the people in the Senate on the deep state payroll, the swamp creatures, they wouldn't particularly like that either. And I guess I think it was a couple days ago, maybe it was yesterday. I mean, it's been going on over the last couple of days. The videos of Vance and Gaetz going around trying to get the numbers, and it must have just become incredibly apparent that the numbers were not there and that it was not going to work and that it would be a huge political battle. Whereas it's very important that Trump's DOJ is ready to go on day one to start killing figuratively, of course, but
Yeah.
killing nonetheless.
Yeah, I think that this was a potential the whole time. I just had actually Jesse, who's over in the X chat right now, texted me offline and said, what was it? I don't want the AG to be palatable to anyone in Washington. I agree. I think that's the whole point.
Right.
But no, I think that there is a lot of movement going on here. 4D, 8D, 12D chess, whatever you want to call it. I think that my favorite, I'm going to choose to say that the Trump transition team is playing Axis and Allies while everyone else is doing Go Fish, or maybe Slap Mat. There you go. Instead of Slapjack, Slap Mat. Come on, that was a good one. You have to like it. Never mind. You're not paying attention to me, you punk.
I did like it. I laughed.
Oh, whatever. It was it was a snort. That was like what my dog does to me when one of them is upset that I'm not giving them enough attention. But let me say this. I think that unfortunately, the left is just going to run amok with this. Oh, the ethics probe. He's just resigned Congress to avoid it. That's all this was about. That's garbage. It really is garbage. Look, I don't know. Maybe Matt Gaetz was a bit of a womanizer before he got married and slept around and talked around. The whole thing coming out of this underage stuff and the trafficking stuff is garbage because the Department of Justice raised it out of anonymous sources. And after it had done its damage to destroy him in the camp of we'll say not the court of public opinion, but the court of leftist public opinion, at least, they dropped it. They never mentioned it again. The DOJ moved on quietly. Merrick Garland passed on nailing Matt Gaetz to the wall. That tells you they didn't have anything. So any ethics probe is just pompous Congress critters getting to yell at other pompous Congress critters. That's what they want to do. I don't think there's anything, there's no there at all in my mind. So what this is, maybe Matt Gaetz, they realize they just don't have the votes. There are enough Republicans who are going to dig their heels in. They're going to move on. Trump is nothing if not practical. Maybe this was just, like we said, an Overton window shift. And now he's pulling the full, you know what this is. Let me pull this up for our watchers. This is what you're watching play out in real time. This right here, The Art of the Deal, is what I hold in my hand, my copy of it, which is all banged up. And there's at least one phone number written down on here. I love it. But you can tell I've written on the top of this. But I mean, this is what they did. The border wall. I need X number billions of dollars for the border wall. What does Trump do? He says out loud in the media some astronomical number, and we're going to make Mexico pay for it. And then what happens? They come to Congress. They ask for a lower than that number, but the number they ask for is actually much higher above what's really needed. So by the time we negotiate down, you get what you wanted or then some because you started high. Mm-hmm. Gaetz, we start extreme. Someone who would do good, who would do well, who would do justice in that role. But maybe I knew this would never be palatable. But now that you've said, oh my gosh, anyone but him. Well, who do they come back with?
Right.
Complain about him.
Right.
You already told me anyone but him. Like they really have stretched the possibility, and who may not have been palatable or would have faced adversarial moves in the Senate now faces a lot less of it by the words of the senator's own mouth. And maybe, just maybe, now that he's resigned and Marco Rubio gets confirmed, which will very likely happen. I don't think there's anything standing in the way of that. Senator Matt Gaetz can kick the tar out of his new colleagues longer than he would have as the AG. That could be fun.
That would be fun.
What do you think? Florida Senate. Matt Gaetz. Who's the other guy who was? They were floating him a Florida representative, I think, or a Florida senator, or Laura Trump. What do you think? Should we put in another Trump, or should it pass to Gaetz or someone else?
I think it should go to Gaetz. That's what I think.
I would tend to say so, because I think that I don't know. I appreciate. I was just telling you off air. I appreciate Laura Trump and her legal acumen, because they have come in and just used the RNC to tear it up on beating election integrity in courts. I'm not sure though. When you move to the Senate, I don't know if you move to the Senate and then. I really would like someone values-driven. I'd like a lot more values-driven than we have, but oh well, that's where we are. What else? Before we get into our topic at hand for the week, is there anything else we need to cover? Any of the other big ones? We've seen a lot of Trump transition. They've been releasing names like gangbusters. They were just ready this time.
Yeah, it's nothing new like that's super notable. I mean, has anybody been announced aside from there was what's her name, Linda McMahon for Department of Education? Is that confirmed?
Yeah, Linda
Oh yeah,
McMahon.
McMahon.
I forget exactly what.
Sorry, I'm Irish,
Uh,
so I pronounce it the extremely Irish way.
yes, McMahon. Linda McMahon is as education secretary. Let me see here. U.S. ambassador to Canada, Pete Hoekstra. There you go. He was in Michigan, so it wasn't a huge leap for him to cross the border. But let me see. They had Matt Whitaker, former acting attorney general, as the U.S. ambassador to NATO. That one is exciting. Matt Whitaker was a bit of a bulldog. I remember his congressional hearings, and that makes me excited. And then it was also Mehmet Oz. Dr. Oz got his tap to lead the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services. I'm not particularly thrilled about that. I'm not an Oz fan, but I'm also not necessarily putting a lot of stock there. Howard Lutnick as the new Secretary of Commerce. I find my only other thing to talk about this, Doug Burgum, who I like, governor of North Dakota, independently wealthy. Doug Burgum seems cool, but Doug Burgum, I also recognize, is part of or sucked into to some extent the net zero agenda, this carbon stuff. He's not like a radical, carbon emissions are killing the world, but I mean, he's still nonetheless committed to what I would call the more benign and still annoying, politically correct version of reducing the carbon footprint. I'm looking for people to be completely independent of that, and
Right.
he's going to be the new Interior Secretary, but part of the National Energy Council, the NEC, this new thing that Trump is putting together. I don't know. I have reservations about that, but I'm kind of curious to see. In general, we'll move in a good direction, I think, but how good and
Yeah.
how fast is the only question, really.
Well, I mean, if we're reducing carbon by embracing nuclear, I mean, I think that's a good thing, because what I care about is the economy working well and us having enough power to make everything run smoothly and as it should. So I wouldn't mind that, but that kind of ties into our central topic of the great shift, the dawn of the new American civilization.
the dawn. I'm making fun a little bit of your pronunciation, but maybe you did that on purpose. The dawn of the new American civilization. Well, then let's just get right into it, because that's the thing. The Trump transition is going to come on and on. And by the way, folks, we'll probably do something different. Obviously, next week is Thanksgiving. We will not be broadcasting live on Thursday, and it will be very difficult to take a non-broadcast and turn it into a podcast for Friday. So we'll do something different next week, probably something short, maybe earlier in the week, just so you can hear from us in case there's any big or breaking items. But that's it. We'll continue to march on in that. But let's turn to our main topic of the day, because this is very interesting. This one came up. It's been on, I think, all of our minds in some different way, shape, or form. But you really, Mason, brought it to me in the form of a couple of very key things thinking about this philosophically or historically. There's a lot there, because we've been talking, and I'll just preface this, and then I want you to launch and give us an overview here. We've talked a lot about the preservation of the path of Western civilization, what that means for where we are now in America, what it is that we are trying to preserve, but also what we're trying to advance, because this isn't just, and this is one of the reasons I really want to find a better term for our side of the political aisle for this new American right, because conservative, this doesn't tell me anything. Conserve what? I don't want to conserve the last 30 years of republicanism, these neocon, Chamber of Commerce hacks that have run everything. I don't want to conserve that. So what is it? Well, I really want to get back to the fundamental, foundationalism. Charles Haywood we talked to. There is a much more technical, much more specific definition that kind of, you have to explain it to people because no one knows what it means. But traditional values, something like that. As you get into the discussion about Western civilization, that really brings this up. And that's where we are now. Looking at the new political alliances, this redefinition of the political right in America, moving forward, what America looks like. Essentially, we have reached the end of what I would call neoliberalism in America. It can't work anymore. I mean, they could destroy the nation, but we've reached the end of it. It's time to move forward in a new way. And I don't think that it's necessarily going to say, well, we have to go back to what Western civilization was. No, I think it's time for Western civilization to take its next step. And you brought to me and posited that Elon Musk and the new space race, whatever you want to call it, is a very vital part of that when you look at historical and philosophical. And from here, I'm going to turn it over to you to introduce our topic and a couple of the, the shifts as we see these ways of viewing mankind and where we are, which obviously, folks, my last thing I'll say, I think this is so important because I feel like as a whole, we are a whole lot less well-read and well-educated in breadth and depth of so many different topics than our forerunners that came before us. And it's time again that we all get, I think, just a little bit more highly educated on a few of these things that are outside our wheelhouses, because we've become very narrowly focused and reliant upon being able to look something up rather than just expanding and locking away some of it in our brains. So in the effort of that today, let's go deep and broad and far way back. Mason, what about the dawn of a new civilization in space?
Yeah, so this came up. This was inspired by a couple of essays by a Substacker called The Tree of Woe, and we'll definitely be linking it in the show notes. That's why you should make sure you're subscribed on unauthorizedcaucus.com so you get the email that will have all these goodies in there. But he had this essay a few days after the election called The Dawn of a New Civilization, and in it he argued that Western civilization is transitioning from a Faustian civilization to an Aenean civilization. Now, what does that mean? Well, Western civilization has been called Faustian civilization by a lot of people based off of the character Faust in Goethe's novel, or is it a poem? I haven't read it, but there's this idea of the Faustian bargain. Somebody that gives up a lot for some kind of great gain, and that's kind of been to reach really far and to achieve something really great. And that's what Western civilization has really done. We have reached really far and achieved really great things. I mean, Western civilization brought us to the moon. That was really like the peak of it, like putting human beings on the moon. But what Mr. Woe is arguing in this essay is that we are transitioning into the dawn of the Aenean civilization. And for those unfamiliar, Aeneas is the main character of the Aeneid, which is an epic poem by Virgil that he wrote in the 1st century AD for Caesar Augustus as kind of like a epic telling of the way Rome was founded. And it's kind of it's like a sequel to the Iliad. He's like, hey, let's just like pick up where they left off. So it's like the Trojans lost the war in the Iliad, and then then Odysseus went off and did his whole Odyssey, but Aeneas went off to Italy and founded Rome. And the reason that he calls it Aenean civilization or the Aenean man is because unlike Faustian man, which gives up something to achieve something great, Aenean man is driven by necessity, the need to make a great transition, to open up a new horizon for himself, because the alternative is destruction. And that's kind of the point we're facing right now. And I think this is why Elon Musk got involved in the election, not because of that exactly, but this is kind of the animating spirit of his motivation, because he recognizes that humanity is facing some crises, and we need to face these head on. And I think he saw that space and energy independence were going to be impossible under continued democratic rule, whereas Trump was looking at a future that would be very optimistic for those things. And Mr. Woe has 2 essays. The first one is about the Aenean man, and then the second one is very much into the nitty gritty of like, okay, what are these actual challenges that we face? And I read that earlier today, and it was interesting and also scary, and really emphasized that okay, there are issues, because he breaks down everything from rare earth minerals to energy production. Looking at the amount of coal reserves, the amount of oil reserves, yada yada yada. And even though these reserves have been going up, the cost of extracting these various resources, such as coal or oil or natural gas or iron or cobalt or things like that, even though there's a lot of them left, enough to keep us running with what we're currently doing for about another century, if we discover no more, it's becoming increasingly expensive to do that. And then he even talks about water, that just because there are so many more people than there used to be, the amount of fresh water per capita has gone way down. And he's like, these are issues that require a serious paradigm shift. And I think Musk is one of the best people to start facing this issue, because he's somebody that's very cognizant of especially energy and environmental issues, as well as somebody that wants to innovate in the energy sector and innovate in the space sector. So what's important is that America and I think Mr. Tree of Woe has a third essay planned where he's kind of going to talk about how we can solve these issues. But his second essay was really trying to steelman, like, okay, let's take the grimmest possible look at the challenges that we're going to face, because there are challenges. Life isn't perfect, but unrealized capital gains tax is only going to make that worse. So. It was water, energy, minerals, and then credit was the other big challenge he brought up, that we are $36 trillion in debt, and that credit is not just numbers on a balance sheet. Like, that is a future demand for actual hard goods and services.
Yeah, this is exciting because I am deep into now Jim Rickard's The New Case for Gold, which is not a new book necessarily. This came out, I think, 8 years ago or so. But man, we're down to John Maynard Keynes and Milton Friedman and gold standards and how that's been politicized. So I did not realize that I would be running from politically manipulated gold standards last night to being so excited about the British thermal unit today. But BTUs was in fact a big piece of this that we were reading. What's interesting to me to take this and break it down, you hear some of this stuff. We have seen people politicize over our history so much some of these things about mankind is running out of resources, or the modern American left, which has gone full on man-made climate change craziness, the population bomb, we know about that one. There have been these things that have come up over time, and at each of these, there's really an opportunity to kind of smack that down. It's political motivation. The climate crisis that the modern American left has pursued, this radical environmentalism, and I know, Mason, and all of our listeners know, likely, this is just craziness. It is a manufactured drama, a line that's been put together, a manufactured crisis in order to achieve control by people at the top of this power struggle. It's a Marxist implementation. This is one of the new oppressor and oppressed. We have oppressed the climate. Mankind, I mean, really, like that's all it is. But there have been different places at different times where other things have reared their head, and through it all, there is a theme. I'm not an environmentalist, but I am a conservationist. But if you go all the way back, I'll take it back to the very beginning, to God's mandate given to us. We are stewards. Stewardship is always incredibly important. So when it comes to the earth around us, stewardship is a key. And as you're looking at that across the ages, I think that's one of the things that looks at us, right now in Western civilization. To your point, we can throw around all of these different things. Faustian, we get into it. If you want to look at this, by the way, folks, and see, I think, did you mention Spengler's Decline of the West yet? I was reading something while you were giving your quick synopsis because I knew what you were giving. Did you mention that specifically, Mason?
I did not, no.
Okay, so if you want to see the shifts leading up to now, because we're talking about people who are arguing we are exiting the current placement or the current thought process of where we are as the Western civilization. We're on the dawn of, or the precipice of, moving into the next one. If you want to look back at where we've come, one of the good, I think, accurate and well thought, Spengler's Decline of the West, he maps out his versions, which include different leaps, Faustian being the last one, this proposition that essentially, if you read Spengler, what he's talking about is mankind pursuing with no reservations, with no thought for should we, or the moral concerns of this. We're just going to go for it. Like, this is the classic Jurassic Park. You just went for what you could and didn't stop to think, should you? Or what's the end of this? I mean, it brings back to Hollywood every time. Even those pedophiles get things right sometimes. But if you look at it, the shift of, and I think this is where Elon Musk represents something. We have seen people just, let's do because we can, and there's limitless potential, and mankind has to strive for improvement and technological advancement and this and that and the other. But part of what's been beneath this since the Enlightenment, in my mind, is a secular version of it. It has set up this humanist tendency because man is the ultimate being, and on our own authority and our own power, we will move forward and make these things happen. But when you look at it in a sense of understanding the limitations that we are not the supreme being of the universe, we exist inside of his order. there needs to be, yes, advancement, and it's a good thing, but there are also limits and caution. And I think those are the two key words, limits and caution. So when you see people like an Elon Musk come around, he's not some sort of environmental crazy, but he understands also fossil fuels being necessary. They don't just, come out of thin air. They're not nearly as almost gone and evaporated as people say, but there also is a finite, as best we can tell, measure of fossil fuels. So being wise about using those and being wise about new sources of energy, and also being smart about the fact that it's not going to be solar and wind that'll replace all of these things. There's this caution and understanding of limitations coupled with I guess not an unbridled innovation and advancement, but it's a bridled innovation and advancement. No, this needs to be directed. We need to be cautious. We need to be realistic. And that meets very well with the practical version, but a hopeful version of the future of America that Donald Trump articulated. I think that's why you're seeing figures like Elon Musk, who represent this new, yes, human advancement and innovation, hurrah, but let's be realistic here and let's be smart. We can't just be little gods unto ourselves doing crazy things. And then when you look around and see a Donald Trump and say, I like that. It's hopeful and optimistic, but it's pragmatic. We should talk to that guy, because you people are just preaching insanity for the sake of keeping power, but it doesn't make any sense. It's not rational, reasonable, logical, spiritual, faithful. I mean, those aren't Elon Musk's concerns. Those are mine. But frankly, they all tie in together, because our faith is, in fact, logical and reasonable and rational, because God is the author of all of these things, the author of math itself. So this is a really interesting thing to see. Like, we can understand all of these different words, the Apollonian age, the Magian age, the Faustian age, maybe now the Aenean age, and it sounds all big and highfalutin and philosophical. But when the rubber meets to the road, you are finding these different viewpoints of humanity and of the future of humanity mixed with the practicality of how we actually do that. And it wraps up very well and starts to explain, oh, now I see how these political people are aligning and how American culture is realigning and what it matters, why it matters, and what's going to happen. It really gives you a good roadmap to understand there is a way forward for humanity that involves great innovation, but not with man as the supreme being at the center, which I think so many of us are oft to criticize, but then what? What
Right.
else in that stead? We have to offer that to people. And that kind of hope is something I think it's time we all start articulating very well, instead of just bashing the psycho Faustian humanists.
Right. And I think that's a big difference between the previous stage, where I feel like Faustian man is very Tower of Babelish, building something to glorify himself, whereas it seems like we're moving into an age of like necessity, or like the view of future necessity. Like, okay, we can't just like go on like this forever. Like the earth does not have infinite resources. It has a lot, but there are also a lot of people. So, I mean, I'm very optimistic. I'm very hopeful that we can start mining asteroids or something like that, because that would, and that's going to be very expensive and very hard, but that would be incredibly bountiful for Earth and for like well-being for the entire globe, really, being able to access things like that. But I mean, yeah, but energy just like pisses me off though, because of how much of Europe is shutting down their nuclear power plants. It's like, yeah, it's so much of Europe these days is you got to wonder, okay, if I was going to try to subvert this country and destroy it from the inside, could I do it any better than what they're doing to themselves? And the answer is really no. As they destroy their energy independence and invite an invasion, like it's suicidal. But that's also part of Faustian man. That's the cost it comes at, because it's this universal outlook that's like, let's welcome everybody in, and let's welcome all viewpoints, and all that can end up with you letting yourself get invaded. So, I mean, do you think that we will see men on Mars within the next Trump administration? Because because I read that the windows don't come that often. The windows are like once every 4 or 5 years for us to like send a mission out to Mars. And it's lining up with the Trump presidency that like, okay, there could be a mission out to Mars, which I think really made Elon seriously consider who he was going to back for president. And it's like, okay, is Kamala Harris really going to let me like launch rockets to Mars and like back me as I do that, or is she going to like force DEI, because to send human beings to Mars requires, like, you can't DEI your way through that. That has to be meritocracy. Like you need the best and the brightest that the universities possibly have to offer. You can't just like checking identity boxes is not going to get you into space.
Right.
So I think he saw that, okay, the culture war issue is a big thing, and like the economic issue is a big thing. So do you think we'll see men on Mars during Trump's administration?
I think, you know what? I don't even know. I'm so excited by it. I think all of us have been just enraptured. Well, I think a lot of us have been enraptured by some of the SpaceX stuff, just watching this, because I know, I mean, for my parents,
the rocket catch, it was
right.
Like, that was like the most
thing.
insane
For
thing I've
my
ever
parents'
seen.
generation, like this is the space race. You saw men go into low orbit, and then men went to the moon, which yes, I do think happened. I you know, there are many questions I have, but that's not one of them. I tend to agree with what Elon Musk even said. That I have a lot of questions about what the government lies about, including JFK and the Bay of Pigs. But in the 60s, the moon is not one of them. I think that happened.
Oh, and he would know, like he would be able to look at the math and everything and the technology,
right.
Be like, oh, okay, yeah, because
But,
he's literally a rocket scientist. Like he's literally building rockets.
He doesn't seem to care about breaking narratives. He doesn't mind. But looking at it, though, I do think that there's going to be some kind of unbridled move that direction. And I'm excited to see what it is, because I kind of consider it the same thing. You know, it's when you think about it, I mean, a desire to place men on Mars and to explore and figure out. I mean, we've done this before on different levels. People came to explorers. Western explorers came to the Western Hemisphere. I say the West. Western civilization explorers from the Eastern Hemisphere came to the Western Hemisphere, as we now know it. They came to the Americas. There were lots of different reasons, but you think about it, each of those expansions of humanity moving, because there were people here already, but the expansions of the huge thriving population centers, that has followed Christianity, Christian civilization since 2,000 years ago. There have been people all over the earth, but the population centers, the advancement for humanity, on behalf of humanity, not just because, that has followed Christian civilization. Each of those expansion points has been not just to prove because we can and man is the ultimate being that we're going to do it. There has been a reason for humanity. Either we've been seeking new economic expansion, we've been seeking new lands because we need places for people to go. People were seeking religious liberty, new freedom, newfound again or refound freedom to express themselves and their faith the way that they want to. There's always been a reason on behalf of humanity, not just because we are humanity and we can. And I think that a lot of our more recent technological advancement has been that. You look at all of the stuff that's been done genetically with a lot of the modification. There's been a lot of because we can and we're in charge, not because this is good for society. I mean, the last 50 years, 60, 70 years has been a lot of that, frankly, because in my mind, we had perverted top-down problems in America. Looking at it, though, from ours, I think going into space and exploring, not just because we can, but because it's the next place to go and it logically can benefit humanity, whether that's from energy or from research or from, fill in the blank, that makes sense. And I think that's worth exploring. And I don't understand why that's not just the logical step for people, the new world. I mean, there was a new world before, and then there was expansion in the continent. Well, the new world, like there are things that we can learn that would benefit mankind. And in my Christian worldview, that makes sense because we are to be good stewards. And I also don't read anything in the Bible that tells us not to go into space. I mean, subdue the earth. It just makes sense. I think it's going to happen because I think for the first time we have that deadly combination of an Elon Musk who's driven enough to try, someone who is smart enough with a team that is smart and unbridled enough to actually make it happen. And they're in a country that may yet again take a this new kind of reaching back to the beginning of this conversation, this new Aenean style approach. Yes, we can and should, but we also have to recognize the boundaries of this, the purpose of this, the fact that there's an arc here. Like it's, we may be able to reach the peak of something, but there's always valleys. You have to understand your place in this. And it's not just some sort of boundless, limitless direction forward, man is the supreme being. There's a purpose for it, but there are also dangers to it. So we do this the right way. I think you have the alignment of that technological capability and power in an Elon Musk SpaceX environment. And you have now potentially that political environment coming to the US. Although I would say maybe we send men to Mars in the next 4 years under a Trump presidency, but also that depends on if Trump can destroy the bureaucracy that's tried to squelch all of human flourishing for the sake of their own advancement and wealth and riches and power. So I don't know. If we clear out the Department of Justice, I think we go to Mars, but that's it's predicated upon the DOJ.
Yeah. I mean, then again, there's a push and pull with Musk because he needs some stuff from the government, but the government also needs some stuff from him. Especially with he's been involved with some defense technologies. I mean, he's like the only guy that can maybe not the only guy, but much more effectively than like NASA or the federal government, put people into space and safely and effectively, as well as like his Starlink, his like internet anywhere thing, that was used in Ukraine, much to the appreciation of the Pentagon and regardless of what you think about the war. I mean, Elon, when he was doing that, he might have changed his view on Ukraine now that he's joined Team Trump, but I'm not sure. But regardless, the Pentagon needs stuff from him. There's stuff that he can do that they can't do on their own, which means that he might be able to send some demands back the other way. Hey, if you want me to give Starlink for whatever, mission here or there, or on this frontier or something like that, you're going to have to let me launch my rockets. So who knows? I mean, I'm hopeful. Having read Musk's biography, he's not the kind of guy that takes no for an answer easily. FAA is do not launch the rocket. And then he is T-10, we're launching the rocket. He might be hard-headed enough.
Here's a whole separate set of questions that I have. But by the way, before I get there, let me say this. I'll swap over. T-Rex Inc. TREXinc.com. Go use promo code Caucus30. You get my beautiful little mug here that you see in the corner of your screen. You see the website there, TREXinc.com. Go on over. Caucus30 is your promo code. Then you will not only get 30% off of the biggest discount that they have to offer, but you will also let our sponsor know that you appreciate their support of this program, this podcast, and getting the information out. I've recognized this. You're looking at some awesome shirts, but there are way more things now. There's hats, there's mugs that are different. There's lots of new designs constantly coming out. Do it for Frank. Do it for Peanut. You need to go to TREXinc.com. Use the promo code Caucus30. Do it for Peanut. That's my pitch, though. Go on over, get some cool stuff. All right, Mason, here's my question. And this is a little bit less on the philosophical side of the dawning of the Aenean age and the rejection of Faustian stuff. I like to throw stuff in at the Grand Voice. You're welcome. Here's my question, though. An interesting discussion to be had, I think, is when you look at government money and control of programs versus private programs. It's interesting to say, well, Elon Musk, okay, so the U.S. had, U.S. government controlled NASA space program in the 1960s, just went astronomically far, astronomically fast, literally astronomically speaking, straight to the moon. And there's your reference for people far older than myself, but I understood it. You have no idea what I'm talking about, though, Mason. The Honeymooners. It's an old TV show. Straight to the moon, Alice. Back when they could joke about things, and now the internet. Domestic violence joking. But the we went straight to the moon really far, really fast. NASA, government program. Well, what happened? Why now? Is it just that government in the 1960s had not yet become the bloated administrative state? You look at something like SpaceX privatizing everything. Oh my gosh, they are absolutely off the charts, better, faster, more efficient, more advanced, more everything than government. However, you and I both know SpaceX exists on a ton of government grants and money. But it's not necessarily government employees and government control. I'm sure there's regulations and strings attached, but it's still Elon and his people taking the grant money and doing what they do in their private world. So
Yeah.
I look at it and
I
say,
think we should be specific. It's not grants or subsidies. It's contracts. Like they're contracting with the government.
You're correct. I'm
which
sorry.
means the
Not
government
grants.
is like, we need somebody to do something, and then different aeronautics companies bid on that contract. But
Right.
Elon actually, but continue your question. I'll get into it.
Well, no, and to your, actually, that's a really good point to raise, though, is that government contracts are different. And by the way, folks, I see we've got a few, we have some X comments and we have some Rumble chat comments that we'll get to in a sec here, although they all stopped once we got really philosophical. So I guess everyone just wants to talk politics. We'll get back there in just a minute. But to your point, when it's a government contract, it's very interesting because now government contracts, I mean, government money has, the proverbial $700 hammers at the Department of Defense. It's not that our advanced war fighters and how much money we sink into trained special operators is what's killing us with government spending. It is ridiculous overspending in other places because there's government contracts that aren't awarded because it's the best. It's awarded because of someone's back scratching. So, you look throughout the military industrial complex and all over the MIC, you see great waste because there are a lot of companies who are motivated to just keep it perpetually going. And they have a lot of congressmen who perpetually send the appropriations money their way because it gets them back into office perpetually reelected. This is not when the government says, well, we need to do some space stuff and there's only really one company out there trying that. Let's go to SpaceX. SpaceX doesn't care about perpetuating. SpaceX cares about advancing.
And,
so
it's not the only one company either.
Right. But I mean, well, it's also, yes, you're correct. I mean, and there's not only one company in the military industrial world either. There's both Lockheed and Boeing, and then Raytheon, and then this, and then that. But you look at a SpaceX, it is a vastly different makeup as far as, we're not talking about companies that have been around, companies that like the status quo. You're talking about a company that came out of there not being a status quo enough for their taste. And now we're here to go to space again because you people stopped caring. And that's interesting. Why did government-funded space programs just peter out and die? Was that a top-down political decision? And if so, what motivated that? Why has it changed since the 1970s and we've never gone back to the moon again? Like, what the heck? What's up with all this stuff?
Well, I mean, it's we call it the space race for a reason. We were racing against the Soviet Union, and the finish line was really the moon. And then we went back a couple more times for fun, but there wasn't exactly that urgency of like, okay, well, we've gone to space. Why do we need to keep going to space?
So you're saying there hasn't been a race for Mars because no one but Elon wanted to do it. No one's serious, but Elon wanted to do it. So there hasn't been another race. So the government hasn't
and there haven't been like competing, superpowers in a bipolar world order racing to Mars. Whereas there was racing to space and to man in space and living things in space and to the moon. But there's something people don't really talk about is the way that Elon actually changed the way government does spaceflight contracts. Because initially it was cost plus contracts, which means like, okay, Boeing gets the contract and then the government pays whatever it costs plus a certain bonus. And Elon went before Congress. I think this was in the sometime before 2010, I'm pretty sure. And he was like, okay, I can do it faster and better and for cheaper than they can. You guys have just messed up the incentive structure. Like, just give me a budget. Like, say you're going to pay me this amount once I complete the job in this time frame. And that's how they started getting contracts, which I mean, government is it's impossible to make it legitimately efficient because it's just not in the market. But that was a more efficient way of doing things. And that's how SpaceX got its foot in the door, by outcompeting for those government contracts in that way, by saying, okay, we'll take a different type of contract. but yeah, I mean, we stopped going to space because there was the Cold War ended. Like, we didn't need to beat down the Soviet Union for that anymore, and I think they kind of got tired of that too, until they collapsed. So, but now we have a much larger demand for why we should go to space, because then it was like a question of like, oh, are we going to need to put weapons in space? Like, are we going to need to put space lasers? And like be able to
Jewish space lasers. Don't forget, they're Jewish space lasers now.
that cause the hurricanes.
Yes, Jewish space lasers.
I'm not as familiar with those.
I don't think anyone is. Oh man. Also, it's made up.
Yeah, but there was much more of a question of like, what kind of weapons are we going to put in space? Like, are we going to put nukes in space? There was this program called the Rod from God program that was like, we're going to put these giant tungsten poles in space and then like drop them on things, like do the math to aim them at something to intercept a nuclear missile. Then they realized there was like no effective way to actually do that. Like, even though you could drop just a piece of tungsten that could like create like a 1,000 TNT explosion once it hits the ground, just because it was so heavy. There was no proper way to really aim that. So it's like we were trying lots of different things for the purpose of like, okay, there's an issue with this other country that we might want to nuke them and they might want to nuke us. Whereas now that's not as much of a concern. Well, actually, I don't know. I mean, things kind of changed over the last week, but I'm on the nothing ever happens train. There's not going to be a nuclear war. Russia doesn't want that, and we don't want that. So we need to go to space because we need to get richer. Like, we need to go to space because we should conquer other planets and we should make humanity multiplanetary.
I think that going to space is, I think that advances human flourishing, as does leaning into fossil fuels and understanding how they're an essential part of human flourishing. I think going to space and exploring and experimenting is an essential part of human flourishing. I see no reason with that. Understanding it, though, inside the lens, to kind of circle back to the beginning of our conversation, understanding that inside the lens of caution and limits and, humanity's own limits, the eternal perspective, as I would call it, biblically speaking, I think is incredibly important. And even though Elon Musk isn't obviously coming at everything with a biblical perspective, he is also coming at things from the understanding of caution and reasonability, and just in terms of, like I said, we're going to call it, instead of a Faustian bargain, we'll call it the Jurassic bargain. Just because you can doesn't mean you should. Like, he understands this basic, well, morally speaking, maybe we should be careful about that. At a bare minimum, in today's age, with the culture rot that we've experienced, thank you to the left's government institutions of knowledge, or I should say indoctrination and the lack of knowledge, that's more needed than ever before, is people to just, at a very bare minimum, say, wait a minute, maybe we should do this a different direction. Right. To find people like that morally, who also are in an innovation manner as advanced as Elon Musk, I think is a very big key to the future, the next stage of whatever this civilizational leap is that we're about to take. Because it has to. There has to be something. We've gone now for it's not even been that long, but we've gone now for too long, in my opinion, on what we're doing with this ridiculous global world order nonsense. It's either command and control or human flourishing. That's really what we've got, those two things pitted against each other. Oh, man. Let me take a look here before we wrap up for this episode. I see here, coming back to the beginning, a few people, short spurts. Everyone got excited and then went away. Maybe they'll come back with more. Oh, there we go. We got some people coming back. Someone chiming into the Gates thing. What happened? Were the allegations true? No, the allegations against Matt Gates aren't true. I think we covered that. But the Department of Justice under Merrick Garland would have absolutely buried him if they had even a shred of it. I can almost guarantee that. So there are no truth. There's no truth to the allegations. They were to destroy his character. But I do think that we need someone else. This is also an agreement. No, Laura Trump, please. No Laura Trump. As far as Gates' withdrawal, I don't know if it had to do with the pure number of Rhino senators or moderate senators that are up for 2026. That's a possibility. And I really do think, we need to route some of these folks out in 2026, and we're not going to have Donald Trump on the ballot. So this kind of brings us back to, guys, this was a Trump wave, not a red wave. We've got to figure that out. We must have big changes and big advancing of grassroots movement against these folks, that energy has to be twice the size in 2026 and 2028 because we don't have Trump on the ballot, which is a very obviously big factor for a lot of voters. So that we'll see what happens with that. Someone over on Rumble says commies are more interested in taking over this world than finding new ones.
True.
Very true. Very, very true. I think that's that. Well, there's a lot to this, and again, if I can just encourage you all, these are important times to be expanding some of our own knowledge and understanding, because whether that is reading scripture or going back into philosophers and historical, historians of old, great pieces of history like this right here, Trump, The Art of the Deal, that I still hold in my hands, trying to explain what's maybe going on with the transition team picks. If you missed it, rewind earlier in the podcast, you'll go back and find it. There's a lot of expansion of our own understanding to do, and I think that we need to be people of great faith. I think that we need to be people of great understanding, and we need to be people of great action. And for too long, I think we've had a lot of people who have I hate to point fingers, and I'm not pointing, but if you feel convicted, maybe that's on you. We've been a people of a very superficial faith, and it has not had much understanding, and as a result, we have not been spurred to much action. But as our faith deepens, as our understanding of the world around us and preceding us deepens, I think our action, the throttle gets opened up on that as well. That's where we are. So do some reading, and you're going to find a bunch of names that you maybe haven't heard before. You're all of a sudden saying, wow, I never realized I cared about Apollonian, Magian, Faustian, and now Aenean civilizational changes. But there's concepts here that I think are incredibly important to understand. You don't have to remember all of the specific stuff, and you don't have to pronounce all the names correctly when you're reading through some of this stuff. Understand the truth behind it. That's what we're after. As believers, as Americans, we want the truth. I want the truth behind all of these things and what I need to do about it. What's good for me, what's good for my family, what is good for our walk with the Lord, what's good for our nation, us as a people, and humanity as a whole as we move forward. Because we're here. We're still here in this timeline, on this earth, and the Lord has not come back yet. So get to it, whatever it is. And maybe it's Mars. Maybe Mars is it. At least for now, or for
Mars, and then Jupiter's moons.
I want Saturn's rings. It's a great thing.
I don't think we can do much with Saturn's rings.
No, we can't. But you know what I need to know? Here's what we need to do. Bottom line, TLDR for Ryan Haidt on this episode of Unauthorized Caucus. I want Pluto back as a freaking planet. Justice for Pluto. All right, that's all. Elon, if you hear me, I'm going to start tagging Elon Musk in this. Trump needs to reinstate Pluto as a planet, at least for the United States. The rest of the global commies can do whatever they want. But the United States of America needs to recognize Pluto once again, or J.D. Vance doesn't have my vote in 2028. I've laid it down. There it is. There's my condition. Oh, man. Final thoughts, Mason?
No, none.
No? Mason agrees with my Pluto demands.
Brain empty.
There's a lot of big ones there, but we're on the cusp. Western civilization, we're fighting to defend it, but also we can't just go back. We're not here to be conservatives for the sake of conservation. We're here to conserve values because those values mean something, but those values are moving forward, as is time itself. So in defending Western civilization, we need to understand what has come before us and what the next step is, because I think it is a great civilizational leap. And to the point that we've just talked about here, whether it's fossil fuels or economic or whatever it is, I think space is a very integral part of that, which is why I think Elon has become a very integral part of our conversation here in America about the future of Western civilization and our leadership role in it. Period. Mine was less juicy than that, but there you go. 2 periods. 2 periods.
It was like a font number 15 period.
Oh man, you have a little baby at home. It's okay. Because weird sounds and all kinds of things
Yeah, that's how we communicate here now.
There we go. Yeah, we don't understand. Grunts and spurts.
Yeah.
Thanks for being with us, folks. Go to trexinc.com. Use that promo code Caucus30. Go to unauthorizedcaucus.com. Sign up there for the emails to make sure you get the notifications and the notes. And then, of course, wherever you are, leave us a review. If you're on Rumble, hit the big green button and follow us. Give a thumbs up to this video. It helps. If you are over on any of the other places, like and share it. And then, of course, if you want to directly support us, if you would like to directly support us, you can absolutely do that. Head over to unauthorizedcaucus.com. You can do it through Substack, or you can do it on Rumble directly. We appreciate it. It goes right back into what we're doing in growing. We've got some big stuff coming up. Obviously, next week will be different, kind of taking a week off from the big long form podcast. I will tease, though, in 2 weeks, Mr. Andrew Muller is going to join us, and we'll have all three of us, which never happens. It's usually just two of us. We're going to have all three of us because Andrew and Alex Newman, a name that many of you are familiar with, were just over in Baku, Azerbaijan for the COP29 climate conference from the UN. They snuck in. They got a bunch of cool videos. Andrew is going to come and break it down for us because especially with the Trump administration coming in, the climate crazy globalists are going to mash the gas. And it looks like there's very certain steps we need the Trump administration to take. Don't miss this episode in 2 weeks. It's going to be a good one. But until then, I think that's it. Like, share, subscribe, unauthorizedcaucus.com, trexinc.com. You know all the places. You know all the things. And then you should come back in 2 weeks. And then maybe next week.
And happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
Yeah, I was about to say happy Thanksgiving. And then in 2 weeks, it'll be another Thursday. Next week, you'll be in a turkey coma. But the week after that, it will be
Caucus time.
Hey, he remembered. Have a good week, everyone.